This self-proclaimed alpha male fitness influencer spent months claiming that this viral gym beating was just self-defense, but now he's pleaded guilty, and that's just one of the criminal cases he's currently facing.
Convicted felon Wesley Watson, known online as Wes, promotes himself as a motivational speaker and fitness influencer. Now he has another conviction on his record.
You would be adjudicated guilty, which is a criminal conviction on your record. You would be sentenced to 21 months state prison with credit for all time served, which would be followed by 7 years of probation.
Yeah, so do you remember when this was supposedly self-defense? Well, about that, if you've watched any of my previous videos on Wes Watson, you probably remember this whole gym fight that has been dragging on for over a year at this point. Every update was basically the same story. His lawyers argued self-defense. They argued that the other guy, he came to the gym to confront Wes, and they argued that the victim was actually the aggressor. And look, whether someone, I guess, intentionally goes looking for confrontation, that's one thing. But obviously, there's a completely different way to handle that situation besides, I don't know, taking your weightlifting belt off and turning your gym into a WWE arena. But I guess after months of hearing about self-defense, we finally get a major update because Wes Watson has now pleaded guilty to aggravated battery in connection with that viral gym beating, which is a pretty significant change in the strategy. So normally, when you actually spend months telling everyone, actually, guys, I was just defending myself, this was self-defense. The next step is, normally proving that in court, not walking in and saying, well, actually, never mind, I plead guilty. So that's an interesting change in stance, but also to be clear, his attorney is still arguing the man deliberately traveled from New Jersey to confront Wes because of his online fame. But we'll get into all that in a minute because it's still an important part of the story. But regardless of how the confrontation started, this case is no longer headed towards a trial over whether Wes committed aggravated battery or not. He actually admitted guilt. And now the fight isn't really about whether he did it, it's about how much prison time he's going to receive. So let's talk about what happened, why this guilty plea matters, and why this might actually be the least of Wes Watson's legal problems right now. Because unfortunately for him, he has way worse problems awaiting now. I don't even know how that's possible. But here's the quick version if you haven't been following the story up until now. So back in December 2024, Wes was actually working out in Elevation Fitness in Miami when another man by the name of Hakeem Ibrahim showed up at the gym specifically to confront him. And according to the defense, Ibrahim had flown from New Jersey because of Wes's online presence and wanted to fight. That's been the backbone of what Wes's legal strategy was from the beginning. And honestly, if somebody books a flight just to argue with an influencer at the gym, that's already one of the dumbest vacation itineraries I've heard of, but hey, here we are. I know a lot of people are going to say, wait, didn't you just do that? Well, that wasn't a vacation. That was just my job. I'll leave it there. But also, I will never get physical with anything. I will just ask people questions. That's about it. Regardless, this confrontation escalated quickly, and investigators say that Ibrahim set up his phone to record the interaction, approached Wes, and at one point pushed him. Then, according to police, Wes took off his weightlifting belt and repeatedly struck him with it. Authorities also allege that after the victim went to the ground, he was punched and kicked by Wes and several other men until a gym employee stepped in to actually stop the attack. And the victim was left with a fractured face, a concussion, and other injuries. And here's where the part that I've always found very interesting about this case happened, because the entire argument has always been about what happened after that first interaction. Because obviously there's a pretty big difference between defending yourself and continuing to attack someone after the immediate threat has ended. And that's ultimately what the prosecutors believed happened here.
I don't think there was any dispute at the beginning of this that Wes was initially able to use force. The tricky part of this case is, when does that force need to be exercised and stopped? And perhaps at this point, he went a bit too far.
Perhaps? Okay, so after more than a year of this case moving through the courts, Wes has now pleaded guilty to aggravated battery instead of, I guess, taking that argument all the way to trial. And a guilty plea changes the conversation completely. So instead of asking a jury, was this self-defense, you're now standing in court admitting to guilt to aggravated battery and shifting the focus to sentencing. So for months, this case looked like it was heading towards a courtroom battle over who started the fight, whether Wes had the right to defend himself, and whether Florida's self-defense laws applied here. Now, prosecutors and the defense are negotiating over how much time Wes should spend behind bars. And I guess under a proposed plea agreement, prosecutors are recommending a sentence of 21 months in prison, with credit for the time he's currently served. And then on top of that, that's also followed by 7 years of probation and court-ordered mental health treatment. And I will have to admit, after seeing the mental health treatment part, that kind of had me stumped for a second, because what do you mean? Has he been wrong all along? Because remember, he's essentially a mental health coach, and now he needs mental health treatment? So if if you've watched like, I don't know, 5 minutes of Wes's content over the past couple of years, his solution to any mental health problems seemingly was wake up earlier, yell louder, and do more burpees. You just gotta be accountable of your own life and your own actions. That's essentially what he was beating into people. Clearly, he was also physically beating people. So overall, as a mental health coach and alpha male mentor, skill issue. But also, before anyone thinks, okay, 21 months in prison and thinks, okay, well, that's the sentence, it's not really that simple because the plea agreement includes recommendations from the prosecutors, but Wes isn't actually scheduled to be sentenced until later this month. So his attorneys are reportedly planning to continue meeting with the prosecutors in an effort to get an even shorter prison sentence before that hearing, which I have to admire the confidence because you're already looking at a deal that includes credit for the time you've spent in jail, and the response is basically, hey, can we make that prison sentence a little bit shorter, please? Like, I get it. Why not swing for the fences? But also, it's not like he's not facing any other criminal problems. Because while this case is getting a little bit closer to the finish line, Wes still has another criminal case pending in Broward County. And that's the one involving the allegations of domestic violence, and along with charges including felony battery, aggravated assault, and witness tampering. And those charges are still pending, and Wes has pleaded not guilty in that case. So even if this plea agreement goes exactly the way his attorneys hope, this isn't the end of his legal problems. This is kind of like checking one thing off of that to-do list, a very long to-do list. And a couple of years ago, this guy's entire brand, again, was built around telling people that he has completely turned around his life after prison. All he had to do was have a little bit of mental discipline, and he was taking these extremely expensive coaching programs and sitting on calls and also pawning off these calls, allegedly, to essentially sell people on the fact that he has the secret sauce to fixing your life and making $1 bazillion. Clearly it doesn't, and it seems like he was a grifter all along. Who would have thought? So now we're sitting here talking about multiple felony cases at the same time, and that's really not exactly that comeback story he was really selling. But there's also another side of the story that's a little bit easy to lose sight of when we spend so much time talking about court dates and plea agreements. So there's still a victim at the center of all this. So according to his attorneys, Hakeem Ibrahim suffered multiple facial fractures, injuries to his teeth and jaw, and a concussion during the attack. So following a guilty plea, attorneys representing Ibrahim released a statement calling it an important step towards accountability. They also made it clear that they're not finished because even though the criminal case is moving forward towards sentencing, the civil lawsuit against Wes Watson is still moving forward. And those two are completely different things. So the criminal case is about whether the state believes a crime was committed and what punishment should follow. And the civil case is about whether the victim is entitled to financial compensation for what happened.
The victim filed a civil lawsuit seeking $50,000 in damages against the gym and Watson. Today, Watson's civil attorney says this case should be dismissed.
So this guilty plea doesn't just affect what happens on July 17th. It could also become an important part on the civil case that's still working its way through the courts. And honestly, that's just another reason why guilty plea surprised me. Because obviously for months, this conversation was about proving this was self-defense. Like, you don't usually spend over a year saying, just wait until everyone hears my side, and then end the case with, well, actually, I plead guilty. Something's just not adding up here. I guess he's just out of options, honestly. That's probably what's going on. Like, there are plenty of reasons why defendants accept plea deals, and I'm not gonna pretend that I know exactly why Wes decided to do this. And obviously, there's that other case, the one tied to the alleged domestic violence incident involving his girlfriend. So according to investigators, she suffered also visible injuries, including bruising, cuts, and an alleged assault inside of the home. So the two cases don't really prove a good track record for him. But police also allege that she was physically restrained, dragged by her hair, struck multiple times, and prevented from leaving the residence. So I mean, again, if all of this is true, the dude is a monster. So even after this guilty plea, his legal troubles are way far from over. In fact, the Broward County case could end up being a way bigger case. But for now, all eyes, I guess, are on the sentencing hearing. So if a judge accepts the recommended deal, again, Wes is expected to receive 21 months in prison, with credit for time he's already served, followed by 7 years of probation and a court-ordered mental health treatment. But again, shout out to John Bravo for breaking this and being an extremely good source to the whole story. And it'll definitely be interesting to see what kind of sentence this guy ends up getting. But without further ado, if you're new here, feel free to subscribe, drop a like if you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you guys in tomorrow's video. Peace.